Hey, good morning and welcome to the Ice Guys. It is Saturday, January 6th, 2018. Something I'm still getting used to writing, but we're gonna plow through that until I can get used to writing an 8 at the end. I'm Dana Lane, and we got a little bit of a mix-up in the lineup today, which is great because it's always good to have a new format and keep us on our toes. And today, Alex B. Smith is having some technical issues, which happens from time to time. Obviously, there's some bad weather going on back east, and today, unfortunately for Alex, it's kind of bit him a little bit. But thankfully for me, I'm not alone. Andrew McGinnis joins me, and Andrew, I know that makes the female version of this show happy that you're with us. And today, Andrew, I mean, I have to say this, man. You look like, man, you got new specs going on. You got a new background. I mean, is this are these your new glasses, or do you usually wear glasses?
Yeah, I just picked them up yesterday, so a little bit of change of
Yeah,
a backdrop and,
nice.
new glasses, a little bit of a change, so, it's always gonna mix things up, and I'm liking them so far. It's a good change. Just trying to be like you every day, Dana, that's all it is, trying to be like you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can understand, my friend, and I do appreciate that, and you follow the footsteps. It will lead you to absolutely nowhere. So, thank you for being with us today. And I want to. Ian Cameron, of course, is out in Vancouver partying it up with Gabe Morency. So he's not with us as well. So it's you and me, Andrew. We haven't done this in a long time. We got a hour to kill and only 9 games. It would be nice if this was a larger card to kill 60 minutes, but we'll get through it like we did last year. But you know, back to the what we used to do last season. I think a little bit later in the day, I used to get some more sleep, but it's just like old times with you and I. Okay, so Andrew, we talked last night, and I said, well, let's go ahead and make this a little bit more interactive. And with only 9 games and an hour to kill, certainly we can add going as depth as you would like. And we'll start off the schedule today with the St. Louis Blues against the Philadelphia Flyers. And Andrew, I made the comment the other day when the Vegas Golden Knights went to St. Louis and played St. Louis or played the Blues at Scott's Trade. I made the comment that I really felt as if St. Louis ultimately would be the best team in the West. I think they're got a good combination of skill. I think they're a heavy team, which I think helps you obviously in the playoffs. Not too heavy. I don't need a. We're not in a league right now where teams go out and just beat each other up, and that's how you win Stanley Cups. I mean, the Anaheim Ducks proved that last year that you need guys to put the puck in the back of the net in order to win the Stanley Cup. But I think ultimately they really do have a good combination of depth and physicality that's going to carry them a long way. And of course, the one thing that St. Louis has always had to overcome is their injury issues. It seems like even since going back to last season. I mean, it is injury issue after injury issue for them. They look like they're getting a bit healthy, but of course, on that left side of the line, Jaden Schwartz is out, Robbie Fabry is out. And then some depth guys that are kind of banged up as well. So they're not 100%. I think when Robbie Fabry comes back from his ankle injury, that you really will see this team take off. Right now, Vladimir Saboka is playing in that spot where he usually is kind of a second line guy. But I really like St. Louis a lot. I feel like they're probably the best team in the Western Conference. In fact, I have them as my number one team in my power rankings right now. We saw the line open at minus $1.25 for Philadelphia. The total is 5.5, minus 25 under. That's actually been bet over a little bit, now down to minus $1.07. And I do see this varies too, Andrew, and you could talk about this. In some spots, it's still minus $1.27, $1.21 to the under. So this, especially with totals, because totals is such a varying opinion, based on who you talk with. You really can shop for these lines, and I know that we encourage you to go onto the SBR odds page all the time to shop for lines. It's really important that you do that because at the end of the day, when you have the difference between minus $1.07 under to minus $1.25 under, a winner there that really cuts into your bankroll or your potential bankroll if you don't shop at the right line. But Andrew, do you have any? I mean, I don't know how much you've watched the St. Louis Blues this year, but this is certainly a Blues team that has a defensive advantage in this one. They're a much better team overall. I don't know if I want anything to do with Philadelphia minus $1.25 either. For me, it would be St. Louis or nothing in in this one, but it would probably be nothing for me in this one.
Yeah, Daniel, maybe we can get your thoughts also on that game against Vegas because for me at this point, like heading into the season and the way the season was progressing, I kind of thought that St. Louis was getting overhyped and everyone was getting kind of way too excited about them. For me at this point, though, in this time, I think St. Louis's best asset is their defense. And right now, I'm all about betting unders with them right now, and that's kind of what they're trending right now. Total's gone under in 4 of St. Louis's last 6 games when playing on the road against Philadelphia. Total's gone under in 9 of St. Louis's last 13 games and playing in Philadelphia in general, and it's gone under in 12 of their last 13 games. So for me, when I look at the St. Louis team right now, I see them as a team that wants to win those 2-1 and 3-1 type style games, and that's what they're comfortable with. Those are the kind of games that they're comfortable with being in my eyes. And I don't think they like those kind of track meet style. I mean, you saw the game they played against Vegas. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Vegas was known for being an over type team, and they were able to defeat Vegas 2-1. So that was kind of an unusual type style game for Vegas, and it might have even thrown them off a little bit. That it was just so much neutral zone time and kind of like so much time just spent kind of cycling the puck around. So for me, in my opinion, I think that when I look at this St. Louis versus Philadelphia matchup right now, it just screams under for me. And I'm not going to really argue with any of the stats in this game. For me, I'm going to make it an official play here on this show with you to take the under on this one. I don't really care if it's shaded towards the under whatsoever. I just think that Philadelphia as well. I mean, they're so inconsistent with getting goals and with productivity for them. So for me, minus 130 is not too bad. It's even minus 125 at Bet 365. That's some kind of best you're going to get. Minus 120 actually at 5 dimes. So look to grab the under in that one. I think St. Louis versus Nashville is going to actually be the Western Conference final this year. Dana, you mentioned your power rankings. I think St. Louis has it what it takes this year, but I just don't think their depth up front. They've got top two lines that are great, but after that, they heavily rely on their defense. And I think if their defense has a couple slip ups in 1 or 2 games, then all of a sudden they get exposed. So that's just my thoughts in this game, but I'm going to be officially on the under in this one, Dana.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about that too. I mean, they do need to get more production from that top line. I mean, Paul Stastny and Tage Thompson certainly have not, lit up the scoreboard as the as first line skaters. Savoca has played well as of late but you go up and down those four lines for St. Louis, and there really isn't anybody who jumps off the page as somebody that that's taking the bull by the horns. And we also know that from the blue line, they're getting absolutely zero production. In fact, they haven't had. I can't even tell you the last time they had a goal from the blue line. And none of their blue liners in the last 5 games at least have had a goal, and most of them barely have an assist. In fact, Petrangelo has 4 out of the last 6 assists from the blue line in the last 5 games. So accurate on that, Andrew. I mean, they do need to get more scoring, but again, when they get healthy and they get this team together, then I'll see exactly where they are. But really, I mean, the Western Conference is completely up for grabs at this point. I mean, we've seen Vegas beat Nashville twice. Vegas gets discounted in most cases by people because that's an expansion team. But honestly, I mean, I there's no. This is why I'm kind of so big on St. Louis because I kind of feel like that at when it gets to the point where they're going to start to make a run at this, I think they're going to be healthy. I like their goaltending. I just think they could be as consistent as any other team in the Western Conference. And no, I don't discount Vegas in any way, but I can tell you this: we've had a lot of discussions on whether or not that they are physically able to withstand the postseason, and I'm not sure if that's accurate at this point. But The flip side of that argument is that, look, if you can move the puck quick and you can put, you can put goals up, it doesn't matter if you're playing against a heavy team or not, because we saw this a couple of years ago with the Stanley Cup final when Pittsburgh played San Jose. San Jose came in the same type of team that was kind of a heavy team. They thought they would lean on the Penguins, and Pittsburgh basically just outpassed them and out had more speed than them, and that's the way that you beat a team that's kind of heavy. So yes, I think Vegas has an advantage in some ways over St. Louis, but I just remember that first game, Andrew, where the Blues completely dominated Vegas, and then Vegas just went to Scott's trade and got beat as well. And not that Vegas didn't have their opportunities for sure, but certainly St. Louis is the only team to get to two victories against the Vegas Golden Knights so far. Okay, moving on to our next game, the Edmonton Oilers at the Dallas Stars. Dallas is open at $1.45. That's about where the number is right now. You can find $1.44 in some spots. Total is where you got the movement. It's at 5.5 minus $1.15 shaded to the under. Now it's minus $1.05 on both sides. And Andrew, I knew that you were involved in this, but or maybe that's Alex. That was Alex. Sorry. I still you're closer to the situation than I am, but I still can't trust the Edmonton Oilers defensively. They are 26 in goals allowed. I cannot, I literally cannot reach into my wallet and back a team that I know may give me a bad defensive effort. Um, they gave up, let's see, they gave up one against Anaheim, but before that, they gave up 18 goals in the last four games. So I think that until I see more of a trend, I'm not going to, again, we go back to don't react to what you just saw, because that's not a reflection of really who a team is. Go back and see a recent form. Go back to 5 to 7 games, and then you'll see, exactly what a team is. And what we've seen before the Anaheim game is a team that gave up a ton of goals, and in each one of those games, they gave up no less than 4 goals. So I'm not ready to jump on the Edmonton Oilers yet. The Stars have won. This is have one more game before their bye week, so you know that they're focused on to getting a victory here. Which I don't love to throw those words out, but there is a mental aspect to this, and certainly if you're a game away from going into bye week, there is a desire that might exceed a normal regular season game to go into that bye week on a high. They won't play for six games, 6 days after that. And I do like the way that they're obviously going into the bye week. They're 12-6-2. So the Dallas Stars are moving forward in the right direction. I mean, Andrew, when you look at teams going into bye weeks, do you change anything going into the bye week or coming out of the bye week, or do you just kind of sit on the sidelines and say, well, I don't we're not in that locker room, so we don't know exactly where teams are mentally. But we do know that maybe coming off of the bye, that they're not as sharp as they would or as they were going into the bye. Do you change anything that you do with your handicapping in relation to the bye?
Well, you know what? I do think that heading into the bye, I mean, you're giving it all you have. I'm not saying that don't do it every single night in and night out, but when you're heading into
Yeah.
that bye, you're getting that message from your coach. You're getting some instructions, and you're trying to stick to that game plan in the whole entirety. I mean, when you know you have some days off, Dana, I'm pretty sure as an athlete, it's gonna stick in your brain if you know that you had a really crappy game right before that break, right? If you had a really shitty game, you guys didn't stick to the game plan whatsoever and didn't do what you were supposed to do, then you're gonna have to deal with that for the next 5 days when you're not on the ice and you can't really make up for it. Whereas if you have, let's say a back to back and you really did terrible in the first leg of the back to back, you can go ahead in the second leg and try and make up for it. So I do think it's a big deal. I don't think it's the biggest of deals, but I also do want to mention that St. Louis versus Philadelphia game is an afternoon game, Dana. And whether people want to admit it or not, I do believe that afternoon games, especially 2 o'clock games, or 2 o'clock where I live, are a lot more trending towards the under. These games, something about the afternoon games. I'm not sure if you agree with this, Dana, but I feel like it takes almost a period for these guys to get their legs and kind of get underway, and that's very, very strong thing for under bettors. So for me, that just helps backing the under in this game, and I'd advise everyone watching this show to get on that under early on. as definitely I believe the closer we get to game time, that'll start to trend more towards the under as we go. But yeah, looking at this Dallas team, Dana, I just think this matchup right now. If you would have told me last year that, hey, Andrew, what do you think about Edmonton Dallas? I would have been like, wow, well, I think Edmonton's going to probably dominate them. I don't really think Dallas is as superior as a team, but right now I think that these are two teams that have gone in complete different directions right now, and it's kind of shocked me, to be quite honest with you. I think Edmonton was so overhyped coming into this season. There was so much pressure on them. Obviously, everyone's always relying on McDavid, but I think this is a typical example right now where he has no real supporting cast right now, Dana, and that's what hockey is. Like you can't. It's not like basketball where you carry a team. There's not one guy or two guys that really can carry a team. There has to be four lines, and there has to be strong defensemen, and there has to be consistent goaltending, and that's not what we're seeing at all. Like right now, we've got Lucic paired with McDavid. We'll see how that works out. Of course, Patrick Maroon had his little suspension for his hit to the head. And how about Leon Draisaitl? I mean, we're not really seeing the same Draisaitl that we saw last year, especially during the playoffs. Him and McDavid were yin and yang last year in the playoffs, and all of a sudden we're not really seeing that as much right now. And let's talk about Ryan Strome for a second. I mean, has he really been a standout player to you, Dana? The guy that's kind of come in after this trade and really taken on his role? Because in my eyes, he's not really been something special for me right now. And looking at this third line right now, projected for today's game, it's Ryan Nugent Hopkins and Mike Camilleri down there in that third line. So for me, just seeing the way Todd McLennan's been moving these lines up and down, I don't really like that consistency. And just to bring up the World Juniors for a second, actually, Team Canada had literally the same
Ugh.
lines in the World Juniors, Dana, for literally most of the tournament. And I think that's always really strong to say that because look at the way Edmonton's been kind of setting out their lines every single day. They're completely different and they're jungled around just because they can't really find any chemistry whatsoever. So for me, I'm just saying that's a really strong thing if you can look at a team's lineup every day and kind of have relatively the same look. And that hasn't been the case whatsoever with Dallas at all. And I'd expect Edmonton to be up there and at least like the late twos or early threes for goals. I mean, Dallas averaging pretty much 3 goals per game, Edmonton 2.83 goals. But the funny thing is, Edmonton's actually averaging 35 shots per game. So I'm not sure if they're just not getting quality shots or they're not really kind of doing what they're supposed to, I guess, but they're not really having much productivity whatsoever. Let's look at their last couple games here. 2-1 win versus Anaheim, a 5-0 loss to LA, 5-0 back-to-back 5-0 losses. They also lost 5-0 to Winnipeg, 4-3 loss to Chicago, and another 4-3 loss to Winnipeg, and of course a 4-1 win over my Habs. So I think this is actually a big game for Edmonton. Dana, what do you think?
Well, I mean, as far as their production is concerned, Andrew, I mean, they're starting to get production up the middle. I mean, Connor McDavid's been Connor McDavid. I mean, he's had a pretty good year. Leon Draisaitl at least has the 8 assists in the last 10 games. He's been over the last 10 games. He's been a point a game guy, and then of course Ryan Nugent Hopkins has 7 in his last 10. So they're getting production from up the middle. They're just not getting anything from their wingers. I mean, the closest thing that they had to production over the last 5 to 10 games is Milan Lucic. They're getting nothing out of Puljujärvi, and as you mentioned, Ryan Strome. Although with 3 goals in his last 10, they're not getting as much production. You're not getting as much production out of their wingers as they need to be successful because even with even with Cam Talbot coming back, I mean, he looks like he's been shaky. His goals against average is hovering around 3 in their last 10 games. So this is not a situation where you can rely on Cam Talbot anymore. And I think, and this just goes back to the beginning, Andrew. I mean, I talked about this day one when I remember game one against the Calgary Flames, where they won their first game of the season, and I thought, well, they're off and running. Well, apparently they did too, and this is not uh, getting to the Stanley Cup playoffs and then moving through the playoffs. This is not an easy thing. This is not just show up and rely on Connor McDavid. to lead you to the promised land. This is very difficult. No matter who you are, you can ask the Washington Capitals about this. It is almost right place, right time, right combination, hot goaltender, right scheduling at the end, right scheduling in the playoffs, and then you see see teams rise to the top based upon all of those qualities. But the Edmonton Oilers, there's something missing there. And as much as we talk about Vegas, and I talk about Vegas because I see them on a nightly basis, but there's something there that you cannot describe that allows them to be successful. And whether it's motivation or they got chips on their shoulders, or Gerard Gallant has a great relationship with his players, and all of the above, they have that intangible. But the Edmonton Oilers have nothing. They look down in their hands, and there's absolutely nothing sitting in their hands, and that's why they struggle night in night out, because there's no magic in Edmonton. And I don't know, you string together 5 or 6 wins, that's when you start to kind of formulate that again. But right now, the Edmonton Oilers is certainly not a team that I can rely on. So let's move on to the next game. Vancouver and Toronto. Certainly, I wouldn't think, Andrew, you want anything to do with this, even though the numbers come down a little bit. Toronto opened at minus a 230, which is way high. And they've been bet down to minus 218. The total's 5.5, shaded to the over minus 20. That really hasn't moved too much. This is going to be one of my plays today, but the Leafs are gonna. They made some news yesterday with a call up. They got Travis Dermott. He got called up, so he's a defensive specialist. As a matter of fact, he's an American Hockey League All Star that should help them defensively, which is an area that they that desperately need help in. I also think they need help in the toughness area. Again, I watched them live against Vegas when they were here a few days ago, and I wrote a thing in the paper that morning, and I said, "Well, I think Toronto's going to come in here and try to smack Vegas in the face," and that's the one thing that teams have not been able to do. I was at a college hockey tournament last night, and I'm telling you, it was more physical than your typical NHL game. This teams come in and they try to skate with Vegas, and before it's too late, they realize we can't play this type of hockey. I don't know where all the hitting's gone in the NHL. I don't know where guys don't finish their checks anymore. It has become, it's become Olympic hockey. At least in the games that I've seen live with the Golden Knights. But we do know that this is a tough thing, because we know the factor with Brock Besser. 21 goals, including 6 on the power play this year. He is a guy that you have to account for. And I don't know how you feel about this, Andrew. I can't imagine anybody would lay 218 with the Leaves at this point, because even if Besser goes off, I mean, can you say that you definitively know that Brock Besser won't score at least 2 goals, or score at least a goal? So now you're behind the 8 ball a little bit. This is a guy that he's a point of game guy. I mean, if he's not now, he certainly will be. And I don't feel comfortable in any way laying 218 with this team. Freddie Anderson had a 33 save shutout against San Jose, and I will tell you, if it wasn't for Freddie Anderson, they had no chance against Vegas. He was fantastic in that game, especially early on. So you have to give props to him as well. This is a game that I completely will stay away from. Obviously, sidewise, I would never be involved in this, but I do like the total, and I do like the total to go over. I think Toronto and Vancouver are two teams that love to get up and down the ice, and as much as I do trust Freddie Anderson, I certainly, this is a guy that could have 35, 40 saves and still give up 3 goals and push this game over the total. So I like the over in this. Andrew, do you have any thoughts on Vancouver, or we should move on to the next one?
Yeah, no, just a quick note. I do agree with you, Dana. I like the over in this game, and like I always used to say, like I always say this, but you sometimes you just don't want to argue with the stats. You don't want to argue with what kind of the game is saying to you. And when you look at this game and really what the odds are, there's no way in hell I'm taking the Toronto Maple Leafs money line. I mean, you'd have to call me crazy if I did, but for me, I think the way that these two teams, their styles of play, and the way they like to push the pace, and there's kind of like nonstop teams. I mean, I feel like it's just breakaway after breakaway with these guys. There's not really much time just cycling the puck around. they love to get shots on net, whether they're hard shots or not, whether they're right to the goalie to just stop the play. Even they like to be intense and get lots of shots each game. But just going over a couple stats here for Vancouver, the total has gone over in 9 of their last 11 games. The total has gone over in 5 of Vancouver's last 5 games on the road. So that to me, that's actually huge. I like to look at that, Dana. I like to look at the difference between away and home because some teams, specifically like the Ottawa Senators, or even sometimes the Toronto Maple Leafs, are way different when they're on the road or when they're at home. Some teams can't score at home for some reason. Some teams are better at scoring at home. So I think that's actually a huge stat for Vancouver. And the total has gone over in 6 of Vancouver's last 7 games when playing on the road against Toronto. So for me, if that doesn't say there's a little bit of support behind that bet, I'm not really sure what does. But for me, these two styles of play, the way that these two teams like to play, I think the over is a great play on this one. And again, I think this is one of those ones, and we hate to, pump it out too much, but people always ask us why we're saying this and stuff like that. SBR odds, you got to get on it, check the odds for different sports books because throughout the days, I mean, we do these shows so early. We are the first show on SBR on Saturdays, but it's one of those things where you have to get those bets in early because if you don't, they can really come back to bite you. I know you can agree with that, Dana. Even just from our show right now, and then let's say 3 hours later, especially in that St. Louis Philadelphia game, I mean, things change and they change massively and they change fast. So, especially with those total bets, I'd say get them in fast. But I'm on the over in this game, Dana.
Next game, Tampa Bay, Ottawa, game 7 and 8 starts at 7 o'clock Eastern time, 4 Pacific. And I know that you specifically wanted to talk about Tampa Bay and Ottawa. I'm assuming it's not because you want to give out a side on this, unless it's Ottawa. But interesting enough, Andrew, the Tampa Bay Lightning have had a ton of trouble going into Ottawa and winning. In fact, in their last 39 meetings, Tampa Bay has dropped 29 of those games. And not that that means anything in relation to today, but I thought that was an interesting stat. But certainly you have a definitive opinion on this game.
Yeah, well, look, after that game last night against the San Jose Sharks, I just think that good for them, good comeback from Ottawa. Might be saying this because I actually had a piece of San Jose, but to be honest with you, this is still a team that I'm looking at fading on a nightly basis. This is an Ottawa team that doesn't seem to really been able to find themselves on a consistent basis, and for me, this Tampa Bay Lightning team, after coming off a loss to the Montreal Canadiens, I mean, what a weird game that was, a 2-1 game. That threw me off completely. I mean, those are the kind of games I guess I need my Habs to be playing in because obviously they can't put up massive numbers. But for me, I'm on the puck line for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I love giving out these puck line bets on the SBR show. I think there's always great value, especially like I said early on in the morning. But taking a look here, where we can actually get um, plus 140 at Pinnacle, and I'll gladly take that. Look, these two teams are completely different, but let's look down the lineups here. Um, Starting things off, so Stamkos and Kucherov have literally been the whole yin and yang. They've looked just like St. Louis. It was Martin St. Louis and Steven Stamkos out there. I mean, you can count on him to almost make a difference and be an impact player every single night for this team. But I think Braden Point, Tyler Johnson, players like that are the ones. Even Chris Kunitz. Like, look at Ryan Callahan and Chris Kunitz being on the fourth line on this Tampa Bay Lightning team. I'm not sure about you, Dana, but I think on other teams that didn't have that great depth, they wouldn't be on the fourth line. They'd probably be first line players on the Montreal Canadiens, but they're fourth line players in Tampa Bay Lightning, right? So for me, I think this is a complete dominant game. I think Ottawa scored all their goals possible last night during that just blow up comeback against San Jose, and I think to be quite honest with you, I honestly do like bounce back spots, and whether people want to believe it or not, I'll continue to say it. When you have a team that's like the Lightning, Dana, and they're scoring 3.67 goals on the season per average, and they barely even put up one, maybe two goals versus the Montreal Canadiens. You can't try and tell me they're going to come out and they've been practicing hard and they're motivated to put up a 4 or 5 or 6 piece against this bummy Ottawa Senators team. So for me, I'll gladly take this. Like Ottawa's only averaging 2.68 goals per game. They're just not a team that I'm looking to back. And Tampa Bay, 12-3 straight up in their last 15 games. They've kind of take care of business on the road as well. 5-2 straight up in their last 7 games on the road. And they've honestly taken care of business in Ottawa as well. They're 5-1 straight up in their last games, 6 games against Ottawa. So for me, I think it's going to be a purely dominant game. I think that especially on that back-to-back spot, I understand the research is there for these guys when it's not late in the year. People think back-to-backs don't matter, but I think for the way that Ottawa played yesterday, having to come back to that big exciting game, I think this is only kind of what this game tells me is that it's either going to be a slow paced game and have a slow start to it. I'd lean the under, or I think that Tampa Bay is going to completely blow them out. So that's one of my stronger plays on the day, Dana. Sometimes I'm not going to hesitate. I think this is one of those games where it just sticks out. Tampa Bay puck line for me.
Yeah, and of course, in order for Ottawa to have any success in this game, they have to keep the Tampa Bay Lightning off the board with the power play. And the Lightning power play is second in the National Hockey League. And of course, Ottawa's penalty kill is 28. So that is a point right there where they really have to focus and make sure that Tampa Bay does not take advantage of that, because that Tampa's in a situation where they could get 2 or 3 goals. They're that much better than the Ottawa Senators penalty kill. Okay, so believe it or not, I thought, geez, we got 9 games, we got a million, a lot of time to get through this, but we do have to rip through these. So Carolina at Boston. Boston minus $1.60 got bet down. Money coming in on Carolina, obviously, and again we see another year where the Bruins seem to be a little overpriced. I don't know what it is. I said it the whole time last year. This Bruin team continues to be priced a little bit higher than maybe they deserve. Although this year's version versus last year's version is much different. But with Carolina beating Pittsburgh 4-0 on Thursday, obviously that gets people to the window to back the Carolina Hurricanes. They are 8-2-1 in their last 11. It was their first shutout of the season, so people are fairly excited to go to the window and get that plus price, a big plus price against the Boston Bruins. And the other thing is, and I'll touch on this really quick because I did a write up on SBR the other day about, or yesterday, in the Panthers Detroit game, and it held true. I don't know, like I know for me, and we always talk about these psychological things. I don't love when things change, and so when the Boston Bruins the other night had their game snowed out against the Florida Panthers, that kind of changed up what they thought was going to be their schedule. And I know for me, I don't like I get my schedule in my head, and then if it changes, it kind of takes me a second to kind of move forward on the scheduling change. I don't know. Maybe it's a man thing or whatever. I'm not sure. But the Bruins had things changed up a little bit, and I don't know how that affects them. I know when I used to play ball, I never liked it when games were rained out because I was so focused mentally all day long on playing. But um, Carolina has had past success against the Bruins, getting at least 1 point in 5 games. They are 5-1-2 in their last 8 against the Bruins. But interesting note in those games is that the Bruins have outscored Carolina. So that means there's a lot of tight games, a lot of shootout games, overtime games. And so, even though that the series has gone towards Carolina, you certainly could make a case for the Bruins today. Andrew, I know this is one of your games as well. What do you have on this?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards the over in this game, actually, Dana. And I just like the way these two teams match up. I like the way Carolina's actually been playing a lot right now, Dana. For me right now, to be honest with you, I'm not sure what your power rankings were looking like, but for me, I didn't expect them to be having this showing, especially this early on in the season. Carolina being 8-3 straight up in their last 11 games. And I think the biggest thing for them right now is defensively. They're kind of they're doing a great job containing the top lines on the opposing teams. You look at their game against Pittsburgh on the 29th, just a 2-1 win, and to me, that's huge. When you play big teams like that with big names on it, you don't want to get in that track meet style game and have to try and beat them 6-5 or 5-4 kind of style. So for me, that's huge. But let's take a look at the power play percentage here. Boston only hitting 12.5% on the power play, and to me, I think there's so much talent on this Boston team. But when it comes down to it, uh, as the season progresses, it's really important to try and narrow down on their power play. And I think that the biggest problem with Carolina right now, in my eyes, is that they're kind of just solely reliant on those top two lines. But with this Bruins team, I've been saying this for a while. And I know you're a Bruins fan, Dana. I just like their depth. I just
I'm a
like what I
Golden
see of.
Knights fan, my friend.
Oh, Golden Knights fan now. My fault. My
I'm a
fault.
Golden Knights fan.
Yeah, but I honestly though, every single night you have no idea what you're going to get out of that team. I think that they're a team that you can rely on for goals every single night. I do. When you tell me the Boston Bruins are playing, I'm not expecting a low scoring game. I'm not expecting a 2-1 game or even a 3-1 game. I'm expecting a big strong game. Unless Tuukka Rask just stands on his head, I think the Bruins can always comply for some goals. So in my eyes, this is an over game. The way Carolina's been looking these days, they're pretty strong. They've been pretty reliable to put up some goals for you. And the health Boston's really healthy right now. The only injury they have left to kind of get rid of is Adam McQuaid. I mean, they've got everyone back, and I don't think they're really missing him offensively. So so heading into this game, I'm all over the over in this one. I think this one should be actually a pretty exciting matchup. Boston averaging 3.13 goals per game. Carolina just 2.85 on the season, but they've actually been really stepping things up in their last 10 or so games. So for me, this should be a really exciting one. I think this is going to be kind of maybe even a strong start. I actually look to take possibly over in the first period at 1.5 in this one. We don't give those out too often on this show, but I think this actually could be one of those bets that could work for this game. So over in this one at 5.5, Dana.
Okay, awesome, Andrews. Because I'll be on the under at 5.5 in this game, so we'll see we'll see who gets the better at that. I just I these Carolina Bruin games sometimes are not a reflection of, especially from the Bruins standpoint, a team that, believe it or not, does like to get up and down the ice. I mean, even last year when they were, struggling to make the postseason, I mean, they were putting a lot of shots on. It was kind of really the opposite of where Claude Julien usually is. But they were, as they are this year, they were a high tempo team. And certainly we've talked about the other day about that first line being as good as anybody in the league. Going on to the next game, Rangers, Arizona. There is no line on this, so we won't spend a lot of time on it. But Antti Ranta has been confirmed for the Coyotes. And of course, he gave up 2 goals on 39 shots and their overtime win against the Predators. And it was a great win for Arizona because this was a game that, again, Nashville blew. They have blown, I think, 6 great games in the last 3 minutes this season. Very uncharacteristic of the Predators. But this is certainly, Ranta comes in and faces his old team, and you have to think that, boy, he'd love to give them a loss going out of the desert tonight. But again, we're still talking about the Arizona Coyotes. And going back to Ranta and his last 2 out of his last 3 starts, or I'm sorry, in his last 3 starts, he's stopped 83 of his last 90 shots, which, if you do the math, is over 92%, which is really my barometer for where a goaltender is. And the Rangers, of course, have lost 4 of the last 6 games. So this is not a game I would be involved in anyway because you're always going to get Arizona at home at a plus price, and they're just not a good team. And I know that plus price, especially for our colleague early on in the season, was such an attractive a bet for him. But to me, I don't want anything to do with Arizona until I see more of a consistent form. Okay, 3 games to go on this schedule. We got 15 minutes to do so. Minnesota, Colorado. Minnesota minus $1.23. That's been bet down to minus $1.23 in some spots. 5.5 is the total. 15 shaded to the over. That has also been bet down to the under. Now minus $1.10 to the under. And Minnesota's 4. Minnesota. I wish we had Alex on the show because he could talk about the Wild. They're really, one of these teams is so hard to figure out for me. I kind of try to stay away from them because you just never know what you're getting on a nightly basis. Of course, they've
Couldn't
won
agree more.
4.
Couldn't agree.
What's that?
Couldn't agree more. I agree.
Yeah,
It's a game that's
I
really
have
hard to figure out.
no Yeah. Yeah, I have no idea what I'm getting out of this team. So if you really don't have a feel for a team, there's no reason to jump on them just because they're on the schedule. They beat Buffalo 6-2. I don't know what that means. The Wild scored 6 or more goals 14 times since last season, which, strangely enough, if you said, hey, dating back to last season, which team has scored 6 goals or more the most? It's the Minnesota Wild. But again, you can get 6 goals on one night, you can get two on the next. I don't want anything to do with this, especially at a giving up a minus $1.25 against Colorado. In a Colorado team, I saw something. What was it on the sporting news or the a hockey news where they put out a power ranking where Colorado was number 10. I mean, there was also a power ranking that had Vegas at number one. So I'm not. I like Vegas, and I think they really do have a good team. Are they the best team in the league? I don't think so at this point. Um, but they have Colorado. If they win today, would be their fifth straight victory. They have not done that since the 2015 season. Minnesota, of course, has had a tremendous amount of success versus the Avalanche and winning their last four meetings. Andrew, I'm getting a feeling that you don't want anything to do with this. I do like the over in this game, but as far as the side is concerned, I don't want anything to do with that. I assume that's the way you feel on this one as well.
Yeah, well, I always say I don't like to hesitate, Dana, but I do like Colorado in this game. But it's one of those games where I'm going to kind of just silently like them and see what ends up happening because it's not one of those ones that I'm really strong on. But my lean would be on Colorado plus 111 in this game. I like the way they've been playing recently, and they're rolling. And I think the most consistent thing about Minnesota is their inconsistency. So we'll see what they can do tonight.
Okay, last two games on the board. Anaheim at Calgary. Calgary minus $1.25. That has been bet down, so you're getting a much better number with the Ducks. Now looking at minus $1.14. Total 5.5 minus $1.25 shaded to the under. And hey, look, before you know it, the Anaheim Ducks are starting to play pretty good hockey. They have 6 points in their last 7 games. The Ducks have been involved in 7 shutouts this season. So again, and they're 2-5 in those games. So like Minnesota, despite the fact that they're playing better, I still again have no idea which Ducks team is going to show up. And people always ask me, well, where do you have the Ducks in the power rankings? Well, honestly, not very high because my power rankings, Andrew, is based upon giving myself a base of which team has the highest probability of winning on a night in night out basis. It's really my power ratings are really just a rating of consistency. Which team can I rely on a night in night out basis? And Anaheim, although I think is going to make some noise in the postseason if they can finally get some scoring. They just are not a team that I can say I rely on. So I don't have them very high in my power rankings. Calgary's put up 40 shots 4 times in their last 16 games. So we know Calgary can get the puck to the net. And Anaheim is, of course, historically has had a tremendous amount of success against Calgary, winning 12 out of the last 14 games, including 4 out of the last 5 at Scotiabank. This is a game that I would look for Calgary at a even at minus $1.14, which I think is obviously a better number at this point. But I can't trust Anaheim. It's Calgary or nothing for me on this. How do you feel about this one, Andrew?
Well, I always laugh, Dana, because I like to think about the difference between regular season and the playoffs. And for me, if you looked at this as a playoff game right now, I'd be all over Anaheim. This young and kind of not much of a tough team in Calgary that is very skillful on their top two lines, but they're not very tough, I don't think, and they can't really win those big battle type style games. But in the regular season, it doesn't matter at all. I mean, look at Anaheim; they're a playoff team in my eyes. They're one of those teams you like to back in the playoffs because they are strong, they are tough, they can win those 2-1 games, and they love playing gritty. They love playing tough, good old-fashioned hockey. And I think that's one thing that could kind of hurt the Calgary Flames tonight. First of all, the Ducks actually have been looking pretty decent recently, but I just think having Goudreau and Monahan as kind of your standout guys and your best guys, Data. I think they're both two soft players, and that's one thing that's gonna kind of hurt them, whether you like it or not. Even though people say top players are your top players, they're there to score goals. They have to be tough too. They have to be hard to knock off the puck. They have to be one of those players that can back check and win a puck battle and be able to kind of recover the puck on his own and not have to be solely reliant on his other players to kind of chip the puck up to him. So for me, I'll be watching this game from just a research standpoint to kind of see how these two teams match up. Because for me, to be honest, I actually have a lean on Anaheim tonight. I just think that the way these two teams match up, sometimes it's not even really about the team individually. It's about how they're matching up with their opponent. I look at that often, and for me, I just like the top two pairings for the Ducks a lot more. I mean, you got Ferland, Monahan, and Gaudreau, and for the Flames, and Vermette, Getzlaf, and Ricard Raquel, the top line for Anaheim. For me, it's the depth that really matters, and I think the depth for Anaheim is a lot better right now. Cogliano, Kessler, Silverberg, Nick Ritchie, Adam Henrique, and Kevin Roy. So those are the top three lines there for the Anaheim Ducks, and I think it's a pretty powerful top three lines. So I think that as the season progresses, Data, these two teams will start treading in different directions, and Anaheim will go up and Calgary will go down. So it'll be a good one to watch for me, but I'm leaning on Anaheim.
Yeah, and I mean, look, you mentioned that top line for the Ducks. I mean, they are getting production right now from Raquel. They're certainly getting production from Getzlaf, who is absolutely going crazy. Maybe not in the goal category, but 13 goals in his last, or 13 assists in his last 10. And of course, Antoine Vermette is not quite in that category, but he is a nice piece on the left side of that line. And but you know, it's really hard pressed when you get down into the second line. You could say, well, okay, Silverberg is playing well, and yes, that's true. But they're absolutely getting no production out of Kessler. You mentioned Cogliano; they're getting no production out of him whatsoever, and that's not even, going back into their down into their third line. Again, no production up the middle. Adam Henrique, although off to a nice start, has only a couple goals, has 3 points in his last 10, and Derek Grant, of course, we're not expecting anything from him very much, considering he gets about 8 minutes a game, and that's exactly what you're getting is not very much. So, not a huge fan of where Anaheim is right now. I know Calgary has the potential of putting up a ton of shots. A game that I would definitely stay away from, considering how much success the Ducks have had against Calgary in the past. Going to the last game, Nashville and Anaheim. We got 8 minutes to wrap this up, so hopefully we can talk about this and do our best bets in 8 minutes. Los Angeles minus $1.30, bet down to minus $1.17. So as you would expect, you are getting Nashville money coming in, as people are expecting the Predators to be plenty angry after taking it on the chin against Arizona. That has not necessarily been um, a quality to bet on the next game. And we kind of thought, well, a lot of times people think, well, they're going to be angry after the last game. Well, I don't. I don't love that. I think it's kind of lazy handicapping in some ways, because, if you have the ability to be angry and the ability to, crank things up, then maybe you should have been angry and cranked it up against the Arizona Coyotes before you dropped an overtime game to them. So I don't always. There's a different. We always talk about teams that have this mythological next level, and I think that the great teams do have that. They are able to crank up their game a little bit. I'm just not sure Nashville is one of those teams. And again, I go back to Vegas. I saw Nashville and Vegas live, and I know that Peter Laviolette had his guys come out in the second period, and they were fired up, and they really punched Vegas in the mouth. But after that barrage early in the second period, they really had nothing left, and Vegas really just stuck to their game and were the better team. But in this one, the public loves Nashville as getting the plus points. The last 7 meetings have been decided by 7 goals, so expect a close one in this. And of course, we talked about this earlier, as Nashville blew the lead against Arizona with less than 3 minutes to go in a game. It was the Predators' sixth loss this season after blowing a game with 3 minutes or less remaining in that game. I do think that Nashville has a special teams advantage here. If they win the battle of special teams, I think that they'll win this game. But Andrew, you have an opinion on this as well. Which way are you leaning on this one?
Well, you know what? I'm actually really, really happy that you mentioned the whole thing about, a bounce back teams and teams being angry, because I agree with you. It does sound weird saying that, but in my eyes, another way of looking at it is being able to kind of make changes, make adjustments on the fly, have your coach change something, have a good practice following the game. And that's one of those things you can kind of look at it and read the reports, even look out for tweets, look out for interviews with players after practice, look out for finding out what they worked on in practice. And I know you can condone that because you're at some of the Vegas Golden Knight practices, and it really does factor in. So in my eyes, I think this team, and it's a pretty big veteran team. I mean, there's a lot of experience on this Nashville Predators lineup. I think that Laviolette can really make changes from a gamely basis, and they can really adjust. So for me, it's not only about a bounce back spot here and taking that L to the Coyotes. It's more so seeing that they can really make adjustments and make changes. I don't think that was really a bad game by any means, Dana. I don't think they played their worst game, but I know that they're capable of doing better. And uh, again, I'm not saying it's one of those ones where we're going to see a completely different team tonight. And the team you saw against Arizona is just not what the the Nashville Predators were. But this is one of the biggest depth teams in my eyes in the entire NHL. This is one of those teams. I just love their first of all, I love their blue line. Roman Yossi, Ryan Ellis, Ekholm, PK Subban, and then you got now Alexei Emelin and Yannick Weber. I mean, those are three solid pairings, Dana, that I wouldn't even want to mess with. I mean, those all three of those pairings could be top one or two really defensive pairings on a lot of teams in the NHL right now. So for me, it's not as much about a bounce back spot, but I just think that Nashville is going to take care of business right now. I think the LA has been kind of overachieving in my eyes. They're kind of doing too much. They're scoring a lot more than I'd really thought that they were, but their defense has actually been impressing me. So I'd look at actually possibly an under in this play, but my strongest play is going to be on the Nashville Predators.
Okay, and I hear what you're saying on that. My only thing is, do I feel like does this team have a track record of being able to pick themselves off the floor? And I even point to recent games against Winnipeg and Dallas where they gave up 6 goals against Winnipeg as a $1.52 favorite. Then they were at home against a Carolina team that you thought, okay, well, here's their angry position, and they dropped that game as well as a $1.66 favorite. I just don't know. It's not as bad as Edmonton, and I know. Hey, look, I mean, they're certainly doing fine record wise. They're just. I don't know if I have that confidence level that I had last year in them. And then, of course, after that Carolina game, they dropped the game at Dallas. So I need to see more out of Nashville before I back them on a consistent basis. I just don't think that you go down to Arizona, a team that you're clearly better than, a team that went to the Western Conference final or went to the Stanley Cup final rather, won the Western Conference. You can't lose the games like Arizona. There was something missing there, whether it was early motivation or whatever it is. But I just can't back them because I don't understand. I don't know where they are coming off of losses. These are not a team, even against Vegas. I mean, they lost to Vegas, got shut out. You thought they would be angry again. Well, they were so angry they lost to Arizona in overtime. They basically thought that they would roll out there and win that game just by showing up. So we got 2 minutes to go, Andrew. Let's get to our best bets. I think maybe you just gave it unless you got something else. But Andrew, what's your best bet for Saturday?
You know what? I've cashed with the exact same bet before here on this show, and I do love giving the plus money and trying to give these puck lines on the show, and I think there's nothing really that's going to tell me to go against this Tampa Bay Lightning team against the Ottawa Senators team. So I'm going on the Tampa Bay Lightning on the puck line. I think you can get plus 145. Like I said, shop online, look at SBR odds page. That will change throughout the day, up and down. So that is my official best bet on the NHL Ice Guys show.
Awesome, and I'm going Carolina, Boston under. Something about this series is it's always a hard-fought, physical game with not a lot of goals. Sometimes you can get that type of game and still get the 6 or 7 goals, but I'm going to go under the 5.5 minus $1.20. Well, hey, we did it, buddy, man. 60 minutes. We got through these games, and I don't know how we do it sometimes. I thought today, man, we're going to be done doing this in 40 minutes, but I appreciate you joining us, Andrew. And we don't do this a lot. Real quick, tell people how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at McGinnis Picks, MCINNIS Picks, of course. But I've actually started a new brand right now. Premium Sports Info is kind of my brand, the business that I've kind of started. I have a team here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, of handicappers that are kind of specializing in each different major league. So one thing I always say, and is huge in my eyes, is that it's all about your focus on which sport you're doing. For me, I stay in my lane with NHL and CFL, and not saying that a lot of people can't do every sport, but we have people that stick to one sport each and specialize in that. And my DMs are always open. I love interacting with you guys on Twitter. So DM me or mention me on Twitter, and let's talk about some hockey. I know Dana. We always like to get the whole Ice Guys group getting going with a discussion every now and then on Twitter. So feel free
Yes, we
to
do.
email me at premiumsports info@gmail.com, or of course find me on Twitter.
Okay, and you can find me at Dana Lane Sports. For Andrew McGinnis, I am Dana Lane. I appreciate you joining us today for the Ice Guys. We'll see you again Tuesday, where Andrew will, or where, yeah, where
Back with the
Ian will
boys.
take his rightful, yeah, he'll take his rightful spot here, and he won't stumble over who's actually on the show. Have a great weekend, everybody. Cash those tickets.